Hello. What follows is a discussion with Bob Kidney about the time in his life when the band hadn't existed yet and how the band came to be, those formative years before the band started. It's a fascinating journey, and I will have several parts. Please enjoy my discussion with Bob Kidney. Talking about being in Chicago and Kester, right?
Bob Kester.
Bob Kester,
Right.
who I recognize the name from producer credits
Yes.
on. And JB, we were talking about your experience of seeing JB Hutto.
Right.
And um, so let's just start from there. So,
Well, so that was just one example of many of the people I saw. And so I never saw any of the really super famous ones. I mean, I saw Muddy Waters play a couple of times. He played at Akron U. I saw him play. But I mean, but this is not the same. And it's like, so when I left the Navy, I brought all this like up close, in person knowledge.
yeah. So Elmore James was in the Navy.
I didn't know that. He was in the Navy.
During
When?
World War II.
Ah, right.
And did you get a chance to see Elmore James?
No, I did not. He was long gone. I didn't live very long after. I think this would have been '69. I don't think I think he had already passed.
I'm not sure, but I just wondered
No,
because I hear a lot of Elmore James in your work.
I love Elmore James.
Yeah.
I love Elmore James. I think the reason I love Elmore James is because he was a songwriter, and his lyrics were his lyrics were good and his songs were good. They were really interesting songs, like "The Sky is
It's
Crying."
crying,
It's a
yeah.
beautiful image, and there, of course, there's the basic blues themes. But "Shake Your Moneymaker," great song, and so. Anyway, when I came back from the service, I brought all that with me
And the song on the first album, "Leaving Day,"
about leaving.
is
About leaving day.
about leaving.
Right.
Yeah, is part of that about leaving the Navy and waiting to get out and stuff.
How do you know that? Did
Well,
I
we've
tell
talked.
you that?
Yeah, we've talked about it.
Yes, the one line, "I'll feel feet on a smooth, cool
I love
floor."
that line.
That was leaving. I was lucky I wasn't in jail. I was very, very lucky that I ended up in prison in the Navy. And not because of anything malicious. I had nothing against the service. In a lot of ways, the service offered me something I would have never gained here. Besides this experience in Chicago, what happened in the service was, it's good, I think, for people to get away from where they are and go somewhere where they're a stranger. And when you go somewhere and you're a stranger, people treat you in a new way because no one has any baggage about you, any assumptions about you. They're taking you at face value. And when I was in the service, all of a sudden, I was like this flashpoint for all these people. They enjoyed my company, and I felt good, about where I was and who I was, which is not something I was getting here. And when I returned, that was gone again. But that experience was great. And a lot of the men, the lifers and the people I associated with on a personal level were really great people. And so on and so forth. So anyway, I brought all that back here to Akron. And did you want me to tell you about how the band ended up being formed?
Yes.
Okay, so when I returned from the service, the first thing I wanted to do was to hook up with Gary again. We had worked together before I left. and see where he was at. But he had changed. He was involved, and he had a band, and he was involved in all that, and wasn't interested in working with me anymore, and all those things, and that's all well and good. But an interesting thing transpired is while that was going on, the art museum had kind of taken the place of the Birth in a way, because they had these folk nights in their. That's when the art museum was in the old building, the really small building, and they had some kind of a space, and they were having folk music and bands and stuff there, like a coffee house type thing. And a lot of the people that went to the Birth were going there. And the woman I was seeing at the time said that I should go there and play, and told me that Gary's band was playing, and so we went down there to see what he was up to. And while I was there, I was asked to perform. And of course, I had my guitar just by chance.
Yeah.
So
Lucky break.
Yes. And so I did. I did an opener, and there were people there that I remembered. And it was fun, and it was a good thing to be back performing again. Of course, I had been performing when I was in Chicago in the service as well. Not as very much, but I found places to play. And then Gary's band played, and at the end of the show, after it was all over, Greg Colbert, okay, the guy who got busted with him, came up, and he turned out to be the bass player in the band. Well, I didn't know Greg Colbert. I just went over to their apartment, and Greg was working. I never met him, but I found out, and they invited me to come out to a rehearsal in Wadsworth. And I said, well, gee, that would be, to myself, that would be fun. I'll go out there and listen to these guys work and see what they're up to and see what Gary is doing. And maybe I'll get to play a little slide or something. It might be fun, you know. And when I showed up, Gary had left the band. He was leaving Wadsworth. He wasn't in the band anymore, and he was moving to Kent. He was reestablishing himself in Kent. And they needed somebody to front the band. So I took over for what he left behind. And within 2 weeks, the drummer and one of the guitar players quit because they didn't like working with me. Because I knew what needed to be done to make the band actually do something. And I had already had an idea of how things needed to be, and I was already playing harmonica and so on and so forth. So I began to move the band. I changed the name to 156075, the Numbers Band. I didn't say the Numbers Band, just 156075. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, I brought this band. I started making this band into a unit, because when I listened to blues on record, I wasn't listening to the blues. I was like, what's the drummer doing? What's the bass player? Like you would listen to jazz, which is what I was listening to. You know, what is Ed Thigpen playing on the bass? What's he doing? Mm-hmm. And what's this drummer doing? And I had an understanding, well, this is how this stuff works. I'm listening to the bands in Chicago. Oh, that's called a double shuffle, blah, blah, blah. And so I had an idea of the mechanics here, and they were not doing the mechanics. And if I said, well, if we're going to do this, we need to do it like this.
Do it, yeah.
I want to have the feel. I want to have the stuff. So, but anyway, so the drummer quit, and then the drummer quit and the guitar player quit. They're gone. But Gary somehow finessed the drummer to come back so we could move forward, because for a while we're using the other guitar player's brother, and he wasn't cutting it. He was okay, but he didn't pay any attention, and he wouldn't stop on stage, and we were already out playing out. You know? Mm-hmm. So then we got Tim Hudson to come back, and then we started forming into a quartet, and we had bass drums, a guy named Jerry Wolf on guitar, myself. We had a quartet, and we were doing stuff. And then the woman I was with, we were seeing Janis Joplin, at the what's that place up there? That big amphitheater, outdoor theater, Blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "You know that guy over there? That's Terry Hine. He plays really good saxophone. You ought to go over and talk to him, see if he wants to be in your band." And then Terry joined the band, and that's how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So then we were 5, and then we're playing this dope club called the Portage Iron Steelworks, and I'm moving this story forward, and these 2 guys walk up, big guy, little guy. Okay, the little guy's name was Rookie, and the big guy's name was Don Morris, and he owned the Turtle Luck and Cynthia, which was the Spicertown in Akron.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also good friends with Bob Petrie, who owned the Cove.
Right.
And the Cove's losing its house band called Miber Cake, because this is after the shootings, and they're getting the hell out of town as quickly as possible.
Right. But just after the shootings.
Just after the shootings. Just after the
Like
shooting.
June or
The town wasn't locked down anymore, but there wasn't
June,
much.
July.
Yeah, it wasn't much happening. Well, actually, it was probably June. So anyway, but these 2 guys said they're having a battle of the bands. We're out collecting talent, trying to get these bands to show up at the Cove. Why don't you have your band come and be part of this? It's an all-night thing, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to listen to all these bands and then pick the band that's going to replace Marble Cake as the house band. So we do, and we show up, and I come into the Cove. Never been there before, except when I was really young, you know. Then I'm on the stage, and there's all these people in there. It's a free event, and there's all these bands. They're bringing their fans, you know. And this is the absolute truth, okay? We got up on stage, kind of emotional. We got up on stage, and I picked up my harmonica, and I had my back to all these people, and I was like, you know, closed. They were there, the band was there, and I picked up my harmonica, and I went, "We're going to take this club tonight. This is it. We're going to own this place." And I turned around, and we took it. And because we were not playing blues, we were playing boogie music. We were playing the feeling of the blues,
Right.
the intensity, which
Right.
I eat up.
That intensity and that authentic feel.
Right.
And that was all there, and it was in short supply.
All the other bands were doing covers.
Right.
That's where I met Freddie Sale that night. He was in a band called Mantissa. They were doing Santana, and so on and so forth. And, you know, but the thing I think that made it work was that I brought with me, that was 1970, and I had been playing in front of people since 1967. And I brought all that stage experience with me. When I came, I was obviously in a state of high anxiety, but I knew what I had to do. And so, you know, it's like.
So were you still living at home then?
That's a good question. No, I was living. No, as a matter of fact, after the band formed and we were out working and we had an actual thing and we were performing, I lived with Greg and his wife in Wadsworth. I moved to Wadsworth, and they had a room for me, and I worked in Rittman, Ohio, at a place called the Portage Box Company. Is that right? Portage, I'm guessing.
A box company
A box company. I made cardboard boxes. And that's how I made some cash, and we were playing out and putting the band together and so forth. And I lived with them, and I had my own room, and they were kind enough. We lived in an apartment, and my bedroom was in a closet, was in a walk-in closet. Then they moved downstairs to a bigger place, and I had my own room. And then they moved to Akron, because by then the record store had started, Cheap Thrills.
Right, and my friends and I went to Cheap Thrills. That was a pilgrimage for us to go there, and I couldn't believe the selection of blues stuff.
Yeah, because I ran that.
Yeah, well,
And jazz.
I didn't find that out for 10 years after that. But
Right.
as a customer, we would go there with whatever lawn mowing money,
Right,
whatever
right.
we had, and I bought Chicago blues records, every one I could get my hands on,
Right.
and the reason they were there was because you put them there.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and the jazz, I was in charge of the jazz and blues, and then I let them all deal with. Oh, Steve Kane, my God, I know.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we were in the same class and we were close friends through music, and he, turned me on to the jazz thing that was happening then. I knew jazz from earlier, but Steve turned me on to free jazz. I opened up my mind to the possibilities of all this different kinds of expression going on,
Right.
as opposed to the things that Cannonball Adderley and Ramsey Lewis and
Right.
popular jazz at that time. And Steve says, "Yeah, there's this record store in Akron," and we would trot up there with $20, and
You could get a lot of music.
yeah,
for
right.
$3.
Records
Like
were $3
$3
a,
a piece. Right.
an album, and there was a little diner across the street called the Beanery,
I don't remember that.
and we'd go to the Beanery. It was only open for 8 months or something,
I see. I see.
and so that was Dale Gussett, Steve Kane, Randy Felton, my buds. We'd go up there and buy records, and then we'd go to Steve's or somebody's house and play them and talk about them.
I
And
see. Right.
there's no internet, there's no 800 numbers. So if you want to learn about music, you read about it, then you tell your friends, and they read about things, and they tell. And
Right.
so we had this informal organization. And Steve Kane at that time, and when we were in high school, juniors in high school, he had 250 albums. That was the largest record collection of anybody I knew. I had maybe 30,
Wow.
something like that. But so his record library became my study
Yeah.
place.
Sure.
So that record store, Cheap Thrills, lasted for a couple of years, 2 maybe 3, something like that.
Yeah.
And by now, the Numbers Band is making money on Water Street.
Right. No,
All right.
we were very successful. I made a deal. We worked for the Door.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, I don't remember exactly why.
And
I don't-
Eddie ran the door, right?
Yes, Ed was, I knew his sister from high school.
Ed Sigler.
Right.
And Eddie used to let us in with our BS stories about why we didn't really have an ID.
Yeah, I had to put somebody on the door because I didn't trust the bar owner to give me a right count. But I trusted Eddie because I knew Eddie. He was, when I was dating his sister, he was 13. So he ran the door. But there was this huge, I don't remember why there was a protest. I don't think it was the riot after 1 year anniversary, but there were protests up and down. There was something about, I remember what it was. It was, this film came out of the shootings, and there was a huge, it stirred up all this activity and protest because of the film. They actually showed the movie in the third floor of the Cove, which the Cove was in the basement. Then there was the Pizzanella's Pizza, which became a club, and then up above it was an empty, huge place, just empty, the whole size of the Cove. Imagine empty. They put a stage in it and called it the Magic Theater, and some people played there. Ten Wheel Drive played there. A guy who ate baby dolls. What the hell was his name?
I remember 10 Wheel Drive. I remember seeing them there.
Yeah, I think we opened for him. We were going to open for Paul Butterfield in the Magic Theater, but it unraveled. But anyway, there was a protest outside, and there was a group of maybe 30 or 40 people, and Eddie came down and got me and said, "We got a problem." And I went upstairs, and there's all these people out there. Music should be free. Music should be free. Free for the people. Da, 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 da. And I look, and there was this one guy who was really like super aggressive, hyper, and he's like in the doorway. "We're gonna come in there and tear this place apart. Blah, 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 blah. And I looked at him and I said, you know, people in there are making a living from this door. I myself make my living from the money at the door here. I'm one of the people. Okay? And I need this money to pay my rent and the bartenders and the other people. It's not, no one's ripping anyone off here. We're charging $1, all right? So this free music for the people is nice if if your mommy and daddy are paying for your college education. And the guy got up in my face and I said, where are we going? He didn't know me. I said, and he goes, and I don't remember exactly what the conversation, and I just pushed him back and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I don't want this going on. It's going to hurt business. I said, I'll make you a deal. I said, the Numbers Band will play free 2 nights a week, Wednesday and Thursday. You can come for free. It's the same music that you're going to see on Friday and Saturday. Same performance for free. But you got to pay on the weekend, because we need to make some money. And we're probably going to have to raise the door price a little bit. But you'll get your free music. And then it was over, and they walked away, and that was it. But what I didn't realize is that what I had set up was a perfect situation if you're trying to take a street, because if you have free admission, everybody comes, checks you out, and if they want to go somewhere on the weekend, that's where they're going to go, and they're going to have to pay.
Yeah. So let's talk about, because I remember that scene coming up there on a night that was warm, and there were kids up and down those streets, sitting on the streets, barely room to walk on the sidewalks.
Right.
There were, on Water Street.
Right. That's
and
right.
Night after night. It
right.
was there was, what other bands were working, on the street up there in the other clubs? Because there was a bunch of activity. Pirates Alley.
Well, one of the things I think that did that was there were so many businesses in such a tight little spot. There was like the Rendezvous.
Right.
And then next to that, downstairs, was JB's, famous club. There were bands. I don't really remember the bands too much, but I remember there were bands that were popular before we got to the street.
Yeah, Buckeye Biscuit Company and...
that's much later, though.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to be able to recall, but JB's was famous because of Joe Walsh and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was JB's Up.
Right.
Okay. Then next to that was Walters.
Right.
Which was a bar.
Yeah.
Okay. Then next to that was Pisanello's, and they started having music.
Right. And Walters became famous from the James Michener article.
Right.
And there's a video that you're in that was
yes,
made.
that video was made. That movie was made by Dick Myers, and that was actually the transition when Orville's became Walters, because Orville had retired and Walter, his partner, was taking it.
And it was a county bar, but it was a student bar, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like, it was kind of like where all these different cultures sort of that were developing kind of overlapped.
Well, Walters, Orville's, or that bar, whatever you want to call it, was the granary bar for the men who worked at the granary next door.
Yeah.
And they went there for lunch. They went there for breakfast. They went there for Boilermakers before they went to work at 6 in the morning.
Well, it's like I played, the country band, or they thought they were a rock band, but it was, rockabilly at Transylvania Gardens in southwest Canton, across from Canton Drop Forge.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And at Canton Drop Forge, they would line up outside the door at 7 in the morning for shots and eggs.
Oh.
And because Canton Drop Forge is this giant pounding hammer that weighs tons, going bang about every 3 minutes. They'd raise it back up, and it, It's an iron forge. So all the guys that worked there were deaf
Yeah.
and depressed, and
Right.
you know
Right.
they did hard, dirty work and
Right.
got paid
Right.
by the shift. And but yeah, Transylvania Gardens was happening at 7:30 in the morning at shift change.
Inhaling smelting dust.
Yeah, and knocking back shots of cheap bourbon and
Right.
getting fortified to go do your shift.
Right. Well, then, so next to Walters was Pizzanella's Pizza, who later became the Water Street Saloon, and they started having bands. And then we played downstairs at the Cove. And then upstairs next to that was the Pirates Alley. And then there was another place next to that, which was kind of a game palace. So, and down the street, at the end of the street, was another bar.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of stuff going on. And, so the 1, 2, 3, 4 businesses within spitting distance of each other that all had bands all week long.
Okay, Bob. Well, I think this, we covered a lot of ground. We covered 3 or 4
Yeah.
important years there, and I think we're going to call this discussion finished for now. So thank you for